Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Member Spotlight initiative that we are running to celebrate and mark Human Rights Day. And I'm delighted to be joined by one of our Faith for Earth Youth Council members, Rukia, who also works with the Green Northeastern Initiative and who will be joining us today and talking about her work within human rights. So thank you very much, Rukia, for your willingness to participate in this. And I'm wondering if you could start off by explaining a bit about your role within the council, also in the initiative, and generally what activism and work you're involved with.
Thank you so much for having me, and for being an amazing chair with the Faith for Art Council. My name is Rukia Ahmed. I'm currently the East Africa Regional Representative for the Faith for Art Youth Council, as well as the founder and executive director of Green Northeastern Initiative. Green Northeastern Initiative is a youth-led NGO focusing on climate action and empowering communities in northeastern Kenya, which is affected by climate change, and who are marginalized communities who have been left out in the climate space for long and who face the most burden of climate change. Yes, they are underrepresented in the climate global conversations. So what we do basically is mostly climate education, and we focus on the education sector and greening community spaces, because education sector is one of the most affected by climate change, where most of the time we have heat waves in Wajir County and some of the northern part of Kenya. Most schools, most areas are dry, and they have extreme floods, and most of the times it's drought, and anytime we have rains, it's flooding. So that's why greening education is one of our focus, and also building community resilience. Thank you for having me today.
No, that's amazing to hear about the work that's happening. I'm wondering if you can speak a bit to the human rights aspect of it. You mentioned a lot of climate vulnerability, but how much does your work involve the consequential consequences, as it were, for human rights within those regions amidst the climate disruption?
Usually say climate justice. There's no climate justice without human rights, because even having clean environment and access to clean water is a basic human right. So most of our communities are not having like access to water facilities, and even if they have access to water, it's not safe for them. And there's a lot that happens, especially gender-based violence that is exacerbated by climate change in my community. So I believe that by working on better environments and better climate for all of them, we'll be able to meet some human rights and preserve these human rights, so that we don't have girls dropping out of school because there's extreme floods, or children going out of school because they're not able to have better infrastructure. So having access to education is also one of the human rights, and this is some things my community is missing. And maybe that is one of the reasons we are focusing on schools, to make sure that the schools are at least conducive environment for most learners who are in these harsh climatic conditions, and they're able to continue with their education, and also doing advocacy around water accessibility to these communities, so that women don't have to, be raped as they try to get water, or go through some domestic abuse because she's not able to bring water. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I love the way you put that. There's no climate justice without human rights, and I think the intersections between those two are something that are so important, particularly as we move forward in our advocacy and work. We are the Faith for Earth Youth Council, with faith at the front of that. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about how your faith, in particular, inspires you to, in this case, uphold human rights through climate justice and education, as well as your environmental activism.
So basically, as a person of faith coming from the Muslim community, our community and mostly the organization, it works across Muslim communities. And what inspires us really is our faith as Muslims, whereby the Quran really talks about the importance of preserving our environment, and the importance of, sustainable practices. Even in our Islamic teachings, most of the time we are told to preserve water, because water is very valuable for life, as much as we have some religious obligations that requires us to use water. So we are told even when during prayers, we have to access to water or across water at least 5 times a day for our 5 daily prayers, whereby we are supposed to clean ourselves, the hands, the face, the feet, using water. And we are told as we're using this water, we need to use the least amount of water so that that water will be used for other purpose. And we're even told that in a cases whereby the only accessible water is only enough for domestic use, like maybe for drinking and cooking, then we can use soil to just, there's something called tayammum, a small, action of trying to do a purification rather than using water. So imagine even in our religious obligations, we are encouraged to consider priority of water. And that is just an example of how faith is inspiring action in our community. But you will find that most of these people we are working with, they are not seeing climate, intersection of climate and faith. But for someone who understands both areas, I see the intersection between climate and faith, and that is what really inspires me. And I'm like, my faith really requires me to be a dutiful Muslim who preserve the environment and also look at the human rights, because we are told that if we make someone angry, then we are making God, Allah, angry. So if we are not thankful to people around us, then we are not grateful to God. So that means Islam calls for unity and, upholding the rights of others, at the same time, the right of environment, even for the aspect of animals. We are told that there is no, animal or a living creature, whether walking, flying, or crawling, but they are like communities like ourselves. Even the birds are communities like ourselves. Even the wildlife and all the insects and creatures, they are communities like us. So we have to feel for them just like we feel for ourselves as community. And this really inspires us to be dutiful to the whole planet, not only climate aspect, but also biodiversity and the animals and the whole aspect of the planet. So these are some of the things that really inspires us as Muslims to keep doing, something for our planet and to be mindful of our action. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. How does within the context of your spiritual tradition or faith tradition, how do you view the connection between human well-being and the environment? I know you mentioned there's a impetus for taking care of everything, but how does that then relate to your own well-being as humans on the planet from your tradition?
Sometimes I imagine a planet without us, so it will still continue living. The animals will still be living, the plants will still be thriving, and everything will be intact. So we are the ones, first of all, before even I talk about the connection of our well-being and taking care of the environment, I want to relate in that the planet doesn't need us. We are the ones who really need it. And the moment we are the ones who need it, so we have to live harmony with it, because we look at the products we use on a day-to-day basis, it comes from the planet. So without a tree or without certain, vegetation, then we will not be having most of the medicines, will not be having food on the table, will not be having clean air, will not be having clean water. And everything we are relying on comes from our planet. And even if we're using technology and all that, there is nothing, there's something small technology can sustain us with. So most of the products comes from our planet. And that is the moment we have to accept that all this is for our well-being. So I imagine a situation whereby I'm not able to put food on the table. So that means I'll not be even able to live, let alone be healthy. I look at a situation whereby we are in a polluted city. I look at my health. That is why we're having so many chronic illnesses and emerging diseases because of the too much pollution of our cities. And when I'm talking about cities, cities are a bit different from the rural areas or the up countries, because these areas do not have most of the factories, do not have most of manufacturing industries, and do not have much of the pollution. That is why the air is usually fresh. There is not much building. But the populated cities, that means we are competing for very limited resource. Our planet have limited resources, like even air, as much as God has given us enough air. But if that air we pollute it, then that means we are even an enemy to our own health. We are an enemy to our own well-being. So even I see like things like forests. When I'm not emotionally stable, I want to go to a very, beautiful forest or a beautiful scenery, and not an artificial thing will not give me that satisfaction I'll get from a very beautiful planet. So that is also not only the health-wise and the physical well-being, also our emotional well-being comes from our planet. So if we're not having that beautiful planet, we're not having that clean water, we're not having that, when you go to the beach, if it is polluted with plastic, then that means you're not able to even enjoy the sight of the beach because you've polluted it. And we have to go back to the fact that it's we humans who are doing this pollution, not the animals, not other creatures. We are the main cause of the climate crisis. So there's so much connection between our planet and our well-being. Yeah.
So despite that, and despite this, the spiritual teachings leading us and encouraging us to take better care of the planet, we still seem to be getting it wrong. So I'm wondering, in your opinion, what are the spiritual and moral roots of the ongoing environmental crisis? How has this come about, and how can we address it through our faith traditions?
Maybe can't was the humans are the ones who are spreading corrupt consequences of our actions. So it's about our planet, even when we look at our, in terms of accountability for our actions. And if we look at things like fossil fuels, if we're looking at too much profit and we're not able to compare with, the consequences on our planet, on people, because in our Islamic teaching, we are told that before you take an action, you have to know the consequences. So every action we take, we look at the consequences. If there could be one or two outcomes, and we weigh between the outcomes, which one is going to be the best way. So if the outcome is bad, then we are told to leave that action. If the outcome is going to be good, then we have to do that action. So really, this is like, for me, a spiritual connection on how we see sustainability and how we see our moral values. And I feel like as people of faith, there's a spiritual connection that gives us to our planet. Like we have, some kind of some things like we have the Zamzam water, which is a spiritual connection to all Muslims, whereby this water is not just like the normal water. And when we go to Makkah and we get this water from the people who usually go for the pilgrimage, it's something that if you believe that it's going to give you this wish, when you drink it, that thing really happens. So like there are existing of like even some mountains like Uhud, we have a spiritual connection to it. There's some rivers, and the seas that we have spiritual connection to it. And these things we have spiritual connection with is part of our planet's ecosystem. And this should remind us that there's really moral values in our faith teachings that we really need to take care of our planet as faith, as people of faith. And now coming to how can we make sure that what action can we do as people of faith? What is our role? Is usually our scriptures are very clear on the planet, and no scripture talks about harming the planet, but rather it gives us, we are stewards of the earth, as it's said in the Quran, and I also believe in the Bible the same, and some other scriptures that we are created to live in harmony with this planet and to take care of it. So we need to bring to the attention of our congregations. Like today, if I was to get a chance here in this Islamic conference, whereby almost 3,000 Muslim students are here with very high spiritual leaders and Islamic leaders. If I was to get a chance here, I'll remind them of a verse from the Quran that is talking on the planet, not on just spiritual connections. Most of the faith leaders focus on just the spiritual connections. They do not look at things like development, human rights, and the planet. So it's our time to integrate our teachings and to focus on the verses that talk about, protection of our planet, living harmony with nature. So at the end of the day, if we go back to our spiritual connection with the power that is beyond us, and we feel like we will be held responsible for our action. Because for me as a Muslim and coming from the Muslim faith, we know that whatever we're going to do here, we might get away with it from this world, but we believe in the hereafter, that whatever actions we do will be held accountable for our actions on this planet. So even life after this planet, we have to answer those questions to our supreme being. And this could be a chance for us to have that, moral values and that moral guidance that we need to keep doing this in the best way so that we don't have to face God and not be able to defend ourselves because we went against, we harmed a lot of humans. And today, if I am the one of the people who are emitting, greenhouse gases, it will not just affect me, it's going to affect a whole community. And that means I will not only have my own burden, but I'm going to be responsible for the problem of so many people. And Islam really teaches us that we have to be mindful of our neighbors, we have to be mindful of people around us and all the creatures around us, and kindness and living in harmony with not only on the planet, but with people and even the creatures.
Yeah, no, that's really really powerful, I think. The final question I have is, what advice would you give to young people of faith, like ourselves, looking to be a bit more productively engaged and effective within the space, particularly climate advocacy and human rights, from perhaps the perspective of their faiths, but then also more broadly, just wanting to get into the youth advocacy world? What would you recommend they do?
Yeah, for the young people, first of all, we have to recognize that the young people are the agent of change in any community. We are not only the future leaders, we are the present leaders. This means whatever action, actually, whatever decisions that are made today, whatever harmful practices are made on our planet, we will live with the impacts of climate change for the longest. And we are going to face the effects of these decisions, and they will impact us for the longest compared to other older generations. This means we are the ones who really are not only going to be the victims and the burden bearers of this crisis, but we have to be the solution providers because we are very youthful, we are very creative and innovative, and we have the energy and we have the will. And first of all, we have to recognize that climate change is an issue that's affecting everyone, but mostly the young people, and it's going to affect us the most for the coming years. So first of all, especially for the young people of faith, we have to go back to our scripture, what they are saying about climate. We can use that to keep inspiring, to also have the other young people on board, as well as kind of intergenerational, dialogue. It's easier for me to talk to my parents and share my experience in climate change than maybe someone else coming to them. We are also in touch with the whole society, our peers, we're in touch with our families, we're in touch with maybe our community leaders and our faith leaders. So it's a time we have these kind of conversations and look at the intersection of climate change and human rights, and how maybe climate change is really hindering and denying so many people their basic human rights. And through this, we can use a lot of advocacy tools from the grassroots communities to the national level, to the international level. Like myself, what I do is I've been faith leader in the university, but I'm finishing. So I handed over that position. So during my tenure, I was able to inspire other faith, young people in my community and also other communities, because the interfaith aspect is very important, because most of the time I don't just interact with people from the Muslim community. I interact with people from different other faith backgrounds. As a young person, I have to understand the interfaith aspect of doing things. And if I'm able to have interfaith dialogues with them, they're able to connect and be able to inspire action. So another thing we can do advocacy at the national level, like myself, I've been part of, recently we did like policy briefs ahead of COP29. But maybe next time when I'm doing the policy brief with these government entities, I'll try to see how I can do the intersection of faith and climate. Maybe they will be interested. So I'll try to convince them, because faith conversations are not very common in our community. So especially in some countries. So, but Kenya is, a religious country. So it's, I think, a high chance for me to venture into that. So imagine contributing to national policies that will be presented at COP29. So that means I have aired the voices of young people from my community and their interest in different parts of, climate change, how it's affecting. Like my focus was on climate smart agriculture. I come from a community where agriculture is just 1%. So I wrote a policy brief on how can we enhance that and engage more young people in this community to make sure that we have food secure community. Another thing is social media right now. We're in a digital era, so we can use a lot of advocacy on social media. Like myself, there was a time I usually share but I need to start again. I used to share more about my faith teaching and climate. Not only that, but also look at the other aspect. I talk about things like NDCs, the National Climate Change Act of Kenya, and all the other policy documents, and how young people can really take actions. And finally, I also use storytelling. So you can use whatever skill you have as a young person. Like myself, I do storytelling to inspire climate action through educating young people and inspiring children and youth on what are the available practices they can do, like sustainable living. Like what we did there, my sustainable living challenge was really eye-opening for me. I learned a lot. So I'm using some of the teachings to now pass on to the young generations and inspire them. And I believe with that, we are able to inspire action. Finally, as I said, we are the present and future leaders, and actually we are more of the current leaders. So we do, as much as there's so much, there's less we're contributing to climate change, there's so much we can do. And if they're not calling us on the tables, we have to take our chair there and sit on it and make sure that we are part of the discussions, because we will not allow someone to make decisions on our behalf without our presence. So there's nothing for us without us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rukia. It's been great talking with you and learning about your work, and keep up the good work, and keep bringing it to the council. It's great to have you. So all the best.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.